A long time before anyone living today was born, the world carried secrets buried so deep that no one believed they were real. Those secrets waited under layers of sand, stone, and forgotten history. When a small research team worked in the dry lands of the Atacama Desert, they did not expect anything unusual. They only hoped to study ancient carvings and old tools left behind by early humans. But one afternoon, while the sun hit the ground with a harsh glow, and the wind blew dust like tiny needles across the air, a worker's shovel hit something hard. It was not stone. It was not metal shaped by human hands. It was something else entirely. The team gathered around the spot. They dug carefully, brushing away sand and dust until the top of a strange structure slowly appeared. It looked smooth in some places, rough in others, almost like it had been shaped by a tool humans never invented. When the opening was finally found, they used small lights to look inside. What they saw did not match any culture, kingdom, or civilization recorded in history books. The walls had patterns that looked too precise, too perfect, as if created by something that understood math and art in a way humans did not. When they climbed into the underground chamber, they found a device shaped like a half-open shell. It was dark gray, almost silver, with a faint glow running across its edges. It gave the quiet sense that it was waiting for someone to notice it again. Once the dust settled and the team cleared the area, one of them gently touched a small circle on the side. The chamber brightened. Symbols appeared in the air, like floating shapes made of light. A soft hum filled the room. The device was still alive, but an emergency call went out to experts across the world. Soon, the quiet research site turned into a protected zone filled with historians, scientists, engineers, and even language specialists. They worked day and night on the strange device. Some believed it was an ancient human creation that no one had ever recorded. Others felt certain it came from somewhere beyond Earth. No matter their guess, they all shared a sense of wonder and tension. Something important was unfolding when the device finally opened. It revealed thin plates arranged like pages in a book. Each plate held symbols, images, and lines of information that no one could understand at first. The symbols repeated in patterns, suggesting a language. The images looked like stars, planets, and shapes that resembled ships crossing space. It looked like a message, a story, or maybe a warning. Experts slowly worked through each plate. They compared symbols to old human languages, but nothing matched. The writing did not look like anything humans had ever created. As the weeks passed, a few patterns finally made sense. The device was not simply a tool. It was a record. It was placed on Earth a very long time ago, almost 6,000 years in the past. That was a time when humans still told stories through drawings on cave walls, when kingdoms rose and fell without ever knowing what existed beyond the oceans. More translations came together, and the truth began to show itself. The device described a group known as the Jorat Dominion. They were not human. They were travelers from deep space exploring younger worlds. They watched Earth from above, studying early humans like distant observers. The plates described how the Dominion planned to mark Earth as a low-level world, one they would eventually return to and conquer when the time felt right. They believed humans were simple and unimportant, not worth immediate attention. The Dominion left the device as a silent marker, expecting their empire to come back much later. As the translations became clearer, the team realized the message was never meant for humans of that ancient age. It was meant for the Dominion's own kind. The record carried instructions, observations, and notes that suggested the Jorat expected Earth to be easier to take after thousands of years. They believed humans would remain primitive. They believed Earth would never rise to defend itself. They believed they would return whenever they wished. For a moment, the workers and experts felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. They had just uncovered the first solid proof that another species had visited Earth long ago. But that feeling quickly changed when the final part of the message was translated. The device was not only a record, it was also a signal transmitter. When the team opened it, the signal quietly activated. It sent a message out into space. A message that said Earth had been rediscovered. A message the Jorat Dominion could not ignore. Governments around the world were notified. Leaders of different nations held fast meetings with security groups, scientists, and defense experts. No one panicked, but everyone understood the weight of the discovery. Somewhere across the galaxy, a powerful empire had just learned that Earth still existed. And if their views from 6,000 years ago had not changed, they might now see humans as targets. The news spread through major scientific networks and media channels, though many details were kept private. People wanted answers. Was the threat real? Were aliens truly coming? Would Earth be attacked? The public was worried, but at the same time, humans had already lived through their own history of struggles, disasters, and challenges. Many people believed humanity would figure out a solution, just as it had always done. Meanwhile, at the desert site, the team continued to study the device. They found symbols that looked like star paths, perhaps showing where the Jorat traveled. They found diagrams of their ships, tall and sharp like blades moving through the dark. They found descriptions of the way the Jorat observed humans, sometimes landing far away from settlements, taking samples of plants, water, and soil. But the device also held something unexpected. It mentioned a brief moment of contact. The Jorat had approached a small group of early humans. The ancient people were frightened but curious. They offered small items, stones, handmade tools, dried fruits, thinking the visitors were spirits or gods. The Jorat did not harm them, but they did not stay long. They simply recorded their reactions and left. The encounter faded into myth. That was why no story from the past ever clearly mentioned such visitors. The world had forgotten because the Jorat wanted it forgotten. Scientists tried to understand how the device had stayed intact for thousands of years. They studied its material, its energy source, and its construction. The more they examined it, the more it revealed just how advanced the creators were. Nothing inside it seemed to age. Nothing inside seemed unplanned. It felt like a message placed with full confidence that the Dominion would return. Days turned into weeks, and more translations completed the picture. The Jorat Dominion was not a peaceful group. They believed in strict order. They believed strength decided everything. They believed worlds that grew slowly were easy to rule. And they believed humans were not worth taking seriously. When the final plate was decoded, the team found a line that sent a chill through the room. It said the Dominion would return when the cycle of 6,000 years ends to claim what was first observed. The message was written with full certainty, almost like a promise. And now, by opening the device, humans had awakened that promise. Across the world, people waited to hear from the global council that handled the situation. Scientists estimated how far the Jorat might be. No one could say for sure. The signal had gone out, and there was no way to stop it. Somewhere across space, it was traveling faster than human technology could follow. As night fell over the desert, the research team stood outside the chamber and looked at the sky. The stars shone brightly, unaware of the fear, curiosity, and determination rising on Earth. They watched the sky with a strange feeling. They had uncovered something amazing, but also something dangerous. They knew life would not be the same after this discovery. The team returned to their stations, hoping to find more answers before the world encountered whatever was coming. The desert wind carried dust across the ground like a silent warning. The device inside the chamber still glowed faintly, as if it knew its message had finally been delivered after thousands of years of waiting. The news of the ancient device spread quietly at first. shared only between world leaders, scientists, and defense groups. But even behind closed doors, everyone could feel the weight of it. The idea that a powerful alien empire had marked Earth as a future target was something no one could ignore. Still, what surprised people everywhere was how calm humanity remained. Instead of fear taking over, most people reacted with a strange mix of curiosity, caution, and confidence. It was as if the world had grown so used to surviving crisis that even the idea of an alien threat did not break their spirit. In major cities, people talked about it in cafes, offices, and public transport. Some were nervous, but many simply said the same thing: "We've handled worse before." Humans had already lived through war, disasters, pandemics, famine, and struggles that tested every part of society. Compared to battles fought across their own history, the idea of facing something unknown felt almost familiar. Some joked about it, not because it was funny, but because humor was a way to stay steady. Others simply waited for more information, trusting that their leaders and experts would figure out the best path. Inside the Global Council chamber, meetings lasted long hours. Screens showed translations from the desert device, maps of star paths, and possible timelines for any incoming threat. Experts from different countries spoke about what humanity needed to prepare. Even though the recordings from the device were thousands of years old, the mindset of the Jorat Dominion was still clear. They believed humans were weak, simple, and unprepared. They believed Earth would panic the moment the first alien signal arrived. But what they didn't understand was how much humanity had changed over the centuries. In one meeting, an older strategist pointed out that humans had survived everything from massive earthquakes to diseases that wiped out towns. They rebuilt every time. They adapted every time. "Fear is not new to us," he said. "We live with it and move forward anyway." The room grew quiet, not out of worry, but from a shared realization. Humanity did not stand united out of desperation. It was united out of long experience. People knew how to face the unknown. They had done it for generations. Scientists got to work immediately. They studied old defensive systems, satellite networks, and anything that could help them understand what might happen if the Jorat really returned. Engineers took old designs for space shields and reworked them to match modern technology. Tech groups built simulations of possible invasion paths using data from the ancient device. None of this was done with panic. It felt more like preparation for a challenge, something humans knew how to handle through problem-solving and teamwork. The public slowly learned pieces of the truth, though officials were careful not to share anything that would cause fear. Media channels discussed the discovery respectfully, focusing on what humanity was doing to stay ready. Many people found comfort in seeing experts explain things in simple terms. They said Earth had time to prepare. They explained that studies of the mysterious device helped them understand alien behavior. And they reminded everyone that nothing had happened, yet there was no ship in the sky, no enemy at the doorstep. In small towns, families talked at dinner tables. In big cities, people stood at balconies looking at the stars, wondering what might come. But instead of fear, there was something else: curiosity. Humans had always wondered if they were alone in the universe. Now they knew they weren't. And somehow, that truth brought more fascination than terror. Meanwhile, anthropologists studied the Jorat messages more carefully. They tried to understand their psychology. The plates from the device showed that the Jorat had a rigid way of thinking. They believed strength came only from power, not from creativity or adaptability. They thought a world like Earth would never grow strong because its people spent too much time fighting each other. But what the Jorat never understood was that those very struggles shaped humanity into something resilient. Hardship had taught humans to survive in ways no ancient alien record could measure. One discovery stood out. The Jorat did not expect humans to work together. Their records described early humans as scattered groups with no unity. The idea that Earth had grown into a network of countries, cultures, and systems working together would have surprised them. Humans had disagreements, yes, but they also had cooperation, alliances, and shared dreams. That was something the Jorat underestimated completely. As days passed, governments began practicing emergency drills. These were not done with chaos. People were invited to participate the same way they practiced for earthquakes or storms. Citizens learned simple guidelines on how to stay informed, where to go for updates, and how to avoid spreading rumors. Schools taught students about space, communication systems, and the importance of staying calm. Everyone worked together, which made even the most worrying possibilities feel manageable. Scientists created a special communication team to listen for any signal from the Jorat. They set up large antennas in different parts of the world to make sure nothing was missed. Each night, data rushed through their systems, but so far nothing from space replied. Some experts believed the Jorat might take years to receive the signal from the desert. Others thought they might already be on their way. No one knew for certain, but that uncertainty did not break people's spirit. Across the globe, people slowly accepted that the universe was bigger than they imagined. And rather than feeling small, they felt determined. If another species came, they would face it together. No one expected it to be easy, but humans had a habit of rising to challenges when they were pushed. In the middle of all this preparation, the team in the desert kept working. They slept little, ate quickly, and spent every waking hour studying the device. One night, a young researcher stepped outside the chamber and looked at the sky. The stars were bright, scattered across the dark in a pattern that felt ancient and eternal. She thought about the early humans who once stood in the same desert, looking at the same sky, unaware that someone far above was watching them. She wondered what those early humans would think if they knew their descendants would one day prepare to face the very beings that once visited their land. Back in the cities, people continued with their daily routines. They went to work, studied, visited friends, and lived their lives. That normalcy was part of the calm. Humans did not stop living just because something uncertain might happen. They understood that life continued no matter what challenges came. That attitude confused observers from other species who secretly watched Earth from afar. They expected humans to panic, but instead they saw a species that pushed forward with careful steps, steady hands, and hopeful hearts. In many ways, humanity had already faced its own invasions, diseases that crossed borders, conflicts that tested survival, disasters that destroyed everything people had built. But after every hardship, humans got up again. They rebuilt their cities, healed their wounds, and learned to adapt. That experience was something no ancient alien empire could measure with old ... As more translations came together, the Global Council realized something important. The Jorat were not expecting resistance. They saw Earth as a place stuck in its old ways. They believed humans were predictable. They believed fear would weaken them. But they were wrong. Humanity was not frightened because it had already lived through fear. It had already fought for survival many times. And each time it grew stronger. Night after night, scientists monitored the communication screens. Sometimes they stared at the data for hours, waiting for any sign of movement in the vast space beyond Earth. Nothing came yet. But that calm silence only pushed humans to prepare more. Workshops built stronger satellites. Labs tested communication jammers. Engineers upgraded defense systems. Farmers talked about food supplies. Artists created drawings and films, imagining what first contact might look like. Humanity prepared not only with technology, but with heart, culture, and hope. People began to believe that if the Jorat returned, humans would be ready not just with weapons, but with unity. And that unity was something the ancient alien record could never predict. It was something humanity earned through centuries of struggle. As the days turned into nights and nights back into days, the world moved forward without fear. The stars above looked peaceful, but everyone knew that somewhere beyond them, something might be coming. Yet humans did not tremble. They faced the sky the same way they had faced every challenge before, standing strong, standing together, and refusing to bend under the weight of the unknown. When the news of the ancient signal reached every major science and defense center on Earth, a quiet shift began across the planet. People didn't talk about fear anymore. They talked about preparation. This wasn't the kind of preparation filled with panic or confusion. It was steady, thoughtful, and built on a strong belief that humans could figure things out, no matter how strange the challenge was. Inside research labs, engineers and scientists worked from sunrise to late at night. Many of them barely slept, but they didn't complain. They felt a sense of purpose. They knew the Jarat Dominion, the alien empire mentioned in the ancient device, wasn't coming for peace. Their old records showed arrogance, strict rules, and a belief that humans were weak. But instead of being shaken, humanity took those details as clues. If the Jarat believed humans were simple, then humans would surprise them in ways they never expected. Teams around the world started looking at technology in new ways. Old projects that had been abandoned or paused suddenly became important again. A group of engineers reopened blueprints for planetary shields, ideas once written off as impossible. With modern tools, those old ideas didn't look so unrealistic anymore. People began turning what they had into what they needed. In one large lab, a technician looked at mining drones that once dug deep into the earth for minerals. He wondered out loud if those drones could be changed into small defensive units. They already had strong shells, powerful cutters, and advanced sensors. With a few adjustments, they could support orbit defense. Soon, teams around the world copied the idea. What was once a simple mining tool became a part of Earth's protection plan. Scientists brought together data from the ancient device, satellite scans, and old astronomy records. They studied the patterns of the Jarat's star paths and how they traveled. The more they learned, the more they understood that the Jarat valued control and predictability. They believed everything should follow strict order. This gave humans a unique advantage because humans rarely followed predictable paths. Humans won battles by creativity, teamwork, and turning unexpected ideas into solutions. In one meeting, an expert on ancient societies spoke about how early humans adapted to harsh environments. When humans face danger, he explained, they don't just build new tools. They change how they think. That's something rigid societies struggle with. People nodded because they knew it was true. Humanity had survived ice ages, storms, diseases, and wars. Every time they rebuilt with smarter minds and stronger hearts. As the information spread, young students started joining volunteer groups. Some helped in labs. Others joined training programs that taught communication, first aid, basic engineering skills, and emergency planning. Schools taught simple lessons about unity, calmness, and problem solving. Instead of fear, there was a feeling of teamwork stretching across countries, cultures, and languages. Meanwhile, anthropologists studied the Jarat's mindset more deeply. They reviewed every symbol and line from the ancient plates. The Jarat viewed life through strict control. They disliked change. They avoided surprises. They believed strength only came from power, not creativity. And because of that mindset, they never expected their enemies to evolve in ways they couldn't predict. One researcher pointed out something important. If they think humans panic easily, they will underestimate how we act under pressure. This idea spread quickly through the Global Council. It became the foundation of Earth's defense, planned not to overpower the Jarat, but to outthink them. Humans didn't need to be stronger. They just needed to be smarter, faster, and more adaptable. Planning centers filled with maps, star charts, and digital simulations. Experts analyzed what the Jorat might do if they returned. Would they arrive in a large fleet? Would they send scouts first? Would they try communication before conflict? No one knew, but humans prepared for every possibility. They tested communication jammers in space. They upgraded satellite defenses. They built emergency shelters not for hiding, but for coordination and support. Quietly, space agencies that once competed with each other started sharing resources. Engineers in one country sent parts to another. Scientists pooled research data. Pilots trained together in simulators. For the first time in history, the world wasn't just cooperating, it was acting like one giant team. At the same time, every day people continued living their normal lives. They cooked, worked, studied, and slept. But beneath that normal life, a strong determination grew. People didn't feel helpless. They felt ready to help in whatever way they could. Communities organized supply groups and information hubs. Farmers talked about food storage plans. Hospitals practiced emergency response drills that blended modern medicine with fast communication systems. In a coastal city, a group of fishermen listened to updates while repairing their boats. One of them laughed softly and said, "We dealt with storms worse than anything. If aliens try something, we'll handle it." The others nodded, not out of arrogance, but because they truly believed humans had faced nature's hardest tests already. Something about that confidence spread like warmth through crowds everywhere. Meanwhile, the team in the desert kept studying the device. They discovered something surprising. The Jorat had recorded detailed notes about early human behavior. They described humans as emotional, unpredictable, and easily divided. But they also recorded something they didn't fully understand: humans protected each other, even in danger. Early humans defended their families, shared food with strangers, and built shelters together. To the Jorat, these traits looked like weakness. To humans, these traits were the source of their strength. This discovery gave scientists a new idea. If the Jorat misunderstood human cooperation, then humans could use that misunderstanding as an advantage. They didn't need to reveal their entire defense plan. They could keep the most important strategies hidden. Perhaps the Jorat expected chaos, but instead they would find calm, unity, and unexpected tactics that didn't exist 6,000 years ago. Across the world, tech teams worked on programs that could confuse or distract alien systems. They designed false signals, fake defense points, and creative traps that could delay an approaching fleet. These plans were built not to harm innocent lives, but to protect Earth without unnecessary conflict. Even artists played a role. They created posters, songs, and animations that encouraged unity and hope. People watched these creations online and felt connected to one another, even if they lived in different corners of the world. That sense of global togetherness made everything feel less frightening. At night, the sky looked peaceful, but humans knew something far away might be watching. Yet they didn't stare at the stars with fear. They stared with determination. They had no interest in starting a fight. They simply wanted to protect their home, their families, and their future. In one training center, a group of volunteers gathered around a large holographic map. An instructor explained how every small action matters: helping neighbors, sharing information, staying calm, and following plans. Strength isn't in weapons alone, the instructor said. Strength is in people working together. That message echoed everywhere. From small villages to busy cities, people reminded each other that humanity had survived countless challenges. If another one was coming, they would face it with intelligence, cooperation, and courage. As weeks passed, preparations improved. Earth's defense wasn't just about machines and shields. It was about mindset. It was about refusing to break under pressure. It was about proving that 6,000 years had changed humans more than any ancient alien empire could imagine. People didn't know when the Jorat would arrive, or if they would come at all. But Earth stood ready not with fear, but with quiet strength. Not with panic, but with unity. And that unity was something no alien record had predicted. The silence in space had always felt peaceful to humans, but now that silence carried a different weight. People around the world waited for any sign, any signal, any movement that might show the Jorat Dominion had received the ancient message. Even though nothing had appeared yet, the world continued preparing. And as days passed, something interesting happened. Humans didn't grow more afraid. They grew more focused. Inside one of Earth's largest space monitoring centers, screens glowed through the night. Workers sat at their stations with headphones on, scanning every shift in the stars, every whisper of radio noise, every unusual pattern. The center didn't feel tense. Instead, it carried a calm energy, like everyone understood their duty and took it seriously. People spoke softly, passed reports to each other, and logged every detail carefully. One morning, a technician noticed a strange change. It wasn't an alien signal, but a faint disturbance in the outer atmosphere. For a moment, she held her breath, wondering if it meant the Jorat had arrived. But after a few more tests, the team realized it was just a small meteor shower. They laughed quietly, not in relief, but because they were learning to expect the unexpected. The more they watched the sky, the more they understood its rhythm. While scientists studied space, humans on the ground trained for things that didn't involve weapons. Medical teams practiced large-scale response procedures. Communication experts rehearsed how to guide communities if the world ever had to move under a united plan. Even people who didn't work in science helped by forming neighborhood watch groups, organizing supplies, and teaching each other simple safety skills. But beyond all that preparation, something else was happening. Humans were learning more about themselves. In the desert research site, the ancient device continued to reveal new information. The plates showed not only the Jorat's mindset, but also their pattern of travel. They rarely visited planets twice. They believed the world either surrendered immediately or wasn't worth their time. That made Earth different. Earth was the planet they had marked long ago, but never returned to. It was the world that had changed far more than they expected. Every new translation reminded scientists that the Jorat didn't understand how humans grew stronger through challenge. They didn't understand how flexible human thinking could be. They didn't understand how people turned fear into motivation. And perhaps the most important thing, they didn't understand the idea of unity built through differences. To the Jorat, unity meant strict sameness. Everyone followed one rule, one path, one mindset. But humans were different. They could argue, disagree, and still come together when needed. That adaptability was the core of human strength. A global strategy group formed based on this insight. They studied how the world's cultures approached problem solving. Some cultures valued patience. Others valued quick decisions. Some used creative thinking. Others used careful planning. Instead of forcing everyone to follow one idea, the council allowed each team to work in their style, then brought those ideas together. It created a defense plan filled with unique solutions the Jorat would never predict. Meanwhile, artists, writers, and filmmakers created stories and animations that helped people understand the situation without fear. One popular short film showed Earth as a small blue dot glowing in a huge dark space, surrounded by people from different cultures holding hands in a circle around it. The film didn't mention war or fighting. It simply showed unity. Millions watched it online, and many said it gave them a sense of calm. On the scientific side, engineers built tracking stations in remote areas, mountains, deserts, islands, places where signals were clean and clear. They used drones with powerful cameras to scan the upper atmosphere. They tested small energy shields, not to start a conflict, but to protect satellites and communication systems if needed. As the preparations grew, so did the quiet confidence within communities. People started discussing what might happen if the Jorat arrived peacefully, or if they tried communication before conflict. Humanity didn't want to assume violence. They wanted to stay ready, but not aggressive. That mindset mattered because it showed the difference between preparation and fear. Children in schools asked curious questions like, "What if the aliens want to talk?" Teachers smiled and answered honestly, saying humans were open to communication, but prepared for safety. Many students found the idea fascinating. Some even volunteered to help in science clubs, hoping one day they might work in space studies. At night, people gathered in open fields and rooftops to look at the stars. They talked about life, the future, and what it meant for humanity to stand together. Some brought blankets and food, turning stargazing into a peaceful tradition. What started as worry slowly turned into something more meaningful, hopeful curiosity. In one small village, elders told younger generations stories about how their ancestors survived storms, invasions, and harsh winters. These stories reminded them that humans had always been fighters, always survivors. The elders said, "Fear becomes smaller when people stand side by side." Those words spread across social media, becoming a quiet message of strength for millions. In the Global Council, discussions became more focused. They talked about diplomacy. What kind of message should Earth send if the Jorat arrived? Should Earth show strength or openness? Should they explain how humanity had changed? Teams of linguists began preparing simple greetings just in case communication was possible. No one wanted a misunderstanding that could lead to conflict unnecessarily. At the same time, defense teams continued improving Earth's response systems. They built emergency energy grids that could keep cities running even if satellites were disrupted. They upgraded worldwide internet backup lines. They made sure water, food, and medical supplies could be delivered across borders without delay. These steps weren't signs of fear. They were signs of smart planning. Back in the desert, the research team made an important discovery. One of the plates described the Jorat's first impression of Earth long ago. It said humans looked fragile, but contained an inner spark. The Jorat didn't understand what that spark was. Humans knew exactly what it meant: resilience, creativity, heart. Reading that line gave the team a strange sense of pride. Even 6,000 years ago, something about humanity caught the attention of an advanced species. They didn't admire humans, but they noticed something they couldn't explain. People in the council thought deeply about that. Maybe that spark was what would save Earth. Maybe that spark was why humanity didn't tremble now. As preparation continued, the world began to settle into a new normal. Citizens weren't stuck in fear. Instead, they lived their lives with added purpose. They supported each other. They learned new skills. They stayed alert without losing their joy. Whether cooking dinner, fixing machines, working on farms, or studying at school, everyone played a part in the quiet rise of Earth's unity. Then, one evening, the unexpected happened. A faint signal reached Earth's outer listening stations. It was extremely weak, almost like a whisper traveling from unimaginable distance. The sound repeated in a pattern that did not come from any known star system or human-made object. It wasn't loud. It wasn't clear, but it was new. For the first time, humanity had a real sign that something might be moving out there in the dark. And instead of fear spreading across the monitoring stations, a focused calm washed over the workers. They stood at their screens, exchanged steady glances, and began recording every detail. Humanity had prepared for this moment. When the war finally came to an end, the world did not celebrate with loud shouts or wild dancing. People were relieved, of course, but it felt more like a long breath after holding it for too many days. The fear that many expected never truly appeared, and that alone made every citizen on Earth feel something deep inside, something they were only now beginning to understand. The alien Dominion had entered the solar system with massive ships, powerful weapons, and total confidence. They believed humans would tremble the moment their invasion began. They expected chaos, panic, desperation. Instead, what they found was a species that did not react the way they predicted. Humans prepared, humans stayed calm, and humans fought with a level of focus that surprised even themselves. When the alien leaders finally sent a surrender signal, it came with a tone of disbelief. They could not understand how a world they had judged as young and primitive became the greatest challenge they had ever faced. For them, strength came from size, age, and the long history of galactic dominance. But for humans, strength came from something else entirely: struggle, adaptation, and the ability to rise again, even when everything seemed impossible. As the alien surrender was confirmed, officers across Earth checked their screens again and again, unsure if it was real. Some thought it might be a trick, but that idea faded quickly because the Dominion was not known for deception. They were known for pride, and for a proud empire to accept defeat so openly meant their fear had surpassed their pride. In command centers around the world, people simply sat in silence for a moment. They looked at one another and tried to absorb what had happened. For generations, humans had looked up at the sky and wondered if a stronger civilization existed. Now, after the war, many realized something else. They were not weaker than anyone out there. As the news spread globally, people stepped outside their homes and looked at the sky, not with fear but with gratitude. Some hugged their families, some cried quietly, and some simply closed their eyes and let the feeling sink in. The world had changed. Humanity had changed. And the galaxy had noticed. Within days, peaceful messages began arriving from civilizations who had remained silent during the conflict. They admitted they had expected Earth to fall quickly. They were honest about it, but they were also impressed, even inspired. They offered respect, partnership, and in some cases, guidance. It was strange, hearing alien voices thanking humans for proving that empires could be challenged. Many smaller civilizations had suffered under the Dominion for centuries. They had lost their confidence. When they watched humans stand firm, they felt hope again. A council meeting was held on Earth a week after the surrender. Representatives from every major region joined, along with observers from friendly species who requested permission to attend. The meeting was not about celebrating victory. It was about understanding why humans reacted the way they did, why they never feared the invasion the way others expected. During the discussion, one researcher spoke up, explaining something simple yet powerful. Humans had survived countless hardships throughout history. Not alien attacks, but natural disasters, pandemics, wars among themselves, political collapses, personal struggles. They had experienced nearly every kind of challenge possible. Each time, they found a way to rebuild. Each time, they learned something new. That pattern shaped the human mind. It created a kind of quiet strength that people did not always recognize, even within themselves. Fear was familiar to them, almost like an old shadow that followed but never controlled them. When the Dominion threatened them, humans did not freeze or surrender. They acted, they adapted, they planned, and they moved forward with hearts that refused to give up. Another official added that humans had something else the Dominion could not understand: unity in crisis. Even if nations disagreed at times, when a real threat approached, people came together. They shared ideas, resources, and support. That cooperation made their planning stronger and their strategies unpredictable. No alien empire, no matter how experienced, could prepare for a species that worked so well under pressure. Across the galaxy, stories about Earth spread quickly. Some exaggerated, some accurate, but all carried the same message: humans were not to be underestimated. They were not monsters, not conquerors, not tyrants. They were survivors. And survivors made powerful allies. In the months after the war, the Dominion sent envoys to Earth to negotiate long-term peace. It was a difficult process, not because humans wanted revenge, but because the Dominion had never lost a war before. Their leaders struggled with the idea of compromise. Yet slowly, they began to understand that Earth was willing to help them shape a new future instead of punishing them for their past. Human diplomats approached every conversation with calm logic. They reminded the Dominion that peace was stronger than control, that cooperation created more progress than fear. Many Dominion officials were surprised by this. They expected anger or harsh terms or demands for resources. Instead, they saw patience and an offer to rebuild relations in a healthier way. This approach touched something inside the Dominion. They had built an empire on dominance, but they had never experienced kindness after defeat. It changed them little by little. Meanwhile, on Earth, life slowly returned to normal. People went back to work, back to school, back to their daily routines. But the memory of what had happened stayed with them. Some looked at the stars differently, no longer wondering if aliens might attack, but wondering who out there might someday become a friend. Researchers continued, studying the ancient archive found in the desert, hoping to understand more about humanity's first contact 6,000 years ago. The more they learned, the more amazing it became. The knowledge left behind by ancient humans showed that curiosity had always been part of the species. That desire to explore and understand had not changed in thousands of years. Children grew up hearing stories about the invasion, not as tales of fear, but as lessons in courage. Teachers used the events to explain the importance of staying calm, working together, and believing in one's ability to overcome challenges. Students listened with wide eyes, realizing that they belonged to a species capable of great things. As time passed, the world began to invest heavily in peaceful exploration. Instead of focusing solely on defense, Earth launched new missions into deep space, not to conquer, but to learn. Humans wanted to understand the galaxy, connect with others, and make sure no ancient misunderstandings ever caused war again. This new direction brought nations closer than ever before. Technology improved rapidly. Communication systems became stronger. And slowly, humans started building a reputation that reached far beyond their own solar system. Many alien civilizations began inviting humans to join councils and discussions about future cooperation. They wanted Earth's perspective because humanity had shown something unique: the ability to face overwhelming odds without losing their sense of hope. Through it all, one question continued to rise: why weren't humans afraid? The answer was found not in weapons or strategies or numbers. It was found in something simple and deeply human. People had lived with challenges for so long that they understood fear differently from other species. Fear did not control them. It guided them. It reminded them to prepare. It reminded them to stay alert. But it never stopped them from acting. Humans learned long ago that life was unpredictable, that problems always came, sometimes without warning. But they also learned that problems could be solved, that darkness eventually passed, that standing together was always stronger than standing alone. When the Dominion came to invade, humans did not see a giant, unstoppable empire. They saw another challenge, another moment where they needed to stand up. And they did. In the end, the galaxy learned something important about Earth. It was not the planet with the strongest weapons or the most advanced ships. It was the planet with the strongest spirit, a spirit that came from thousands of years of endurance, creativity, unity, and the simple, stubborn decision to never give up. That was why humans were never frightened. And that was why the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again.